I am Dr. Jesse John, Assistant Professor, Department of Anatomy, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University, Jaipur. Now we will discuss introduction to the anatomy of the upper limb. Namaste, हमेशा खुश हो बिटिया. Upper limb is associated with the lateral aspect of the lower portion of the neck. It is suspended from the trunk by muscles and a small skeletal articulation between the clavicle and the sternum, and that is called sternoclavicular joint. Based on the position of its major joints and component bones, the upper limb is divided into shoulder, arm, forearm, and hand. Shoulder is the area of upper limb attachment to the trunk. Arm is part of the upper limb between the shoulder and the elbow joint. Forearm is between the elbow joint and the wrist joint, and the hand is distal to the wrist joint. So in this picture we can see the parts of the upper limb. The axilla, cubital fossa, and carpal tunnel are significant area of transition between the different parts of the limb. Important structures pass through or related and each of these area. Regional anatomy of the upper limb. The shoulder is the region of the upper limb attachment to the trunk and neck. The bony framework of the shoulder consists of clavicle scapula, which forms the pectoral girdle, and the proximal end of the humerus. Superficial muscles of the shoulder consist of the trapezius and deltoid muscles, which together form the smooth muscular counter over the lateral part of the shoulder. These muscles connect the scapula and clavicle to the trunk and to the arm respectively. We can see here in this picture the scapular muscles here. Bones of the shoulder girdle. First is clavicle. Clavicle is the only bone attachment between the trunk and the upper limb, and it is palpable along its entire length and has a gentle elongated as-shaped contour. Its sternal end is enlarged and triangular, where it articulates with the manubrium of the sternum to form the sternoclavicular joint. Acromial end is flat. It articulates with the acromion to form the acromioclavicular joint. The medial two-thirds of the body of the clavicle are convex anteriorly, whereas the lateral third is flattened and concave anteriorly. These curvature increase the resilience of the clavicle and give it the appearance of an elongated capital S. Conoid tubercle near the acromial end of the clavicle gives attachment to the conoid ligament, and the subclavian groove in the middle third of the clavicle, site of the attachment of subclavius muscle, and medially there is a impression for the costoclavicular ligament which binds the first rib to the clavicle. Near the acromial end of the clavicle is the trapezoid line to which the trapezoid ligament attaches, and it is the lateral part of the coricoclavicular ligament. So we can see here all the part of the clavicle. Now we'll see the scapula. Scapula is triangular flat bone that lies at the posterolateral aspects of the thorax, and it covers from the second to seventh ribs, and it will composed of it has three angles, three borders, two surfaces, and three processes that are acromion, spine, and coracoid process. We can see here in this picture the scapular structure. Now we will see the supraspinous fossa and the dorsum of the scapula. There are two species, that is supraspinous and infraspinous, and the anterior side of the scapula there is one fossa, that is the subscapular fossa. The convex posterior surface divided by the spine of the scapula into two fossae. These are supraspinous fossa and infraspinous fossa, and these fossae give attachment to some fleshy muscle of the upper limb. The thick projection rays of the bone called the spine of the scapula, and it continues laterally as the flat expanded acromion, which articulates with the acromial end of the clavicle, forming the acromioclavicular joint. So this is the only attachment where scapula gives a attachment to the clavicle. Superior laterally, the scapula forms the shallow glenoid cavity, which articulates with the head of the humerus to form the glenohumeral joint. Projecting anterolaterally to this cavity is a structure that resembles a bending finger pointed to the shoulder, and this structure is called coracoid process. Now we see the angles and border of the scapula. Scapula has three borders, that is the medial, lateral, and superior, and also three angles, that is the superior, lateral, and inferior angle. And in anatomical position, the thin median border of the scapula runs parallel to and approximately 5 centimeter lateral to the spinous process of the thoracic vertebra. Hence, the median border is usually referred to as a vertebrae border. From the inferior angle, the lateral border runs superolaterally towards the apex of the axilla, and sometimes called axilla border. The lateral border terminates in the truncated lateral angle of the scapula, where the thick glenoid cavity is located. The broad spaces adjacent to the cavity is the head of the glenoid cavity, while the constricted part between the head and the body is the neck. The superior border is marked by the suprascapular notch near the junction of the medial two-thirds and the lateral one-third. It is the thinnest and shortest of the three borders. Glenoid cavity is a shallow concave oval fossa of the approximately 4 cm long and 2 to 3 cm wide for the reception of the head of the humerus bone. The cavity faces anterolaterally and slightly superiorly. We can see here this the glenoid cavity. Now we will see the humerus. It is largest bone in the upper limb, articulates with the scapula at the scapulohumeral joint and the radius and ulna at the elbow joint. It is composed of two extremities, proximal and distal. Proximal humerus uh, consists of the head, anatomical neck, and the greater and lesser tubercle, surgical neck, and the superior half of the shaft of the humerus, whereas head is half spherical in shape and projects medially and somewhat superiorly to articulate with the much smaller glenoid cavity of the scapula. An apical neck is very short and formed by the narrow constriction immediately distal to the head. It lies between the head and the greater and lesser tubercle laterally and between the head and the shaft more medially. We can see this is an apical neck here. Greater and lesser tubercle are prominent landmark on the proximal end of the humerus and serve as the attachment side of the fore-rotator cuff muscle of the glenohumeral joint. The greater tubercle is lateral in position. Its superior surface and posterior surface are marked by three large smooth facets for the muscle tendon attachment. These are the superior facet, and it is for the attachment of supraspinatus muscle, and middle facet it is attachment of infraspinatus muscle, and the inferior facet is for the attachment of teres minor muscle. Lesser tubercle is anterior in position and its superior surface is marked by a large smooth impression for the attachment of the subscapular muscle. A deep intertubercular sulcus separates the lesser and greater tubercles and continues inferiorly onto the proximal shaft of the humerus. The tendon of the long head of the biceps brachii pass through these sulcus. Now we will see the deltoid tuberosity. We will see the surgical neck. It is the most important structure of the proximal end of the humerus is surgical neck, and the neck. This region is oriented in the horizontal plane between the expanded proximal part of the humerus and the narrowest shaft. Surgical neck is weaker than more proximal region of the bone. It is one of the sites where the humerus commonly fractures. Now we'll see the shaft and the distal end of the humerus. Shaft of the humerus has two prominent features, a deltoid tuberosity laterally for attachment of the deltoid muscle and the oblique radial groove posteriorly in which the radial nerve and deep artery of the arm lies as they pass between the medial and the long and then the lateral heads of the triceps brachii muscle. Distally, the bones become flattened and uh, these borders expand at the lateral supracondylar ridge and the medial supracondylar ridge. The lateral supracondylar ridge is more pronounced than the medial and roughened for the attachment of the muscle found in the posterior compartment of the forearm. Condyle, there are two articular parts of the condyle, the capitulum and trochlea, articulates with the bones of the forearm. The capitulum articulates with the radius of the forearm, whereas trochlea articulates with the ulna of the forearm. Two epicondyle, there are medial epicondyle and lateral epicondyle. Medial epicondyle, a large bony protuberance, is the major palpable landmark on the medial side of the elbow and projects medially from the distal end of the humerus. And lateral epicondyle is much less pronounced than the medial epicondyle. It's lateral to the capitulum and has a large irregular impression for the attachment of the muscles in the posterior compartment of the forearm. Three fossa. These fossa occur superior to the trochlea and capitulum on the distal end of the humerus. These are radial fossa, coronoid fossa, olecranon fossa, uh, radial fossa is least distinct of the fossa and occurs immediately superior to the capitulum on the anterior surface of the humerus, and whereas coronoid fossa adjacent to the radial fossa and largest of the fossa is olecranon fossa that occurs immediately superior to the trochlea on the posterior surface of the distal end of the humerus. So we can see here the radial fossa and coronate fossa and olecranon fossa. Now these are two questions you have to answer these questions. These are what are the bones in upper limb and you have to explain in brief, and what are neurovascular supply of the upper limb you have to explain in all brief. Thank you.